taking college courses while traveling the world. Learn more about Semester at Sea.
You have kids, they grow up, and before you know it, it's time to plan for college.
Where do you start?
How much is it going to cost?
Will you qualify for financial aid?
Should you be looking into scholarships?
When will you be able to retire?
What about student loans?
The list of questions is never ending. The good news is, all the answers are right here. Welcome to the Taming the High Cost of College podcast. Here is your host, certified financial planner, Brad Baldridge.
Hello and welcome to Taming the High Cost of College. I'm your host, Brad Baldridge. Today we have a great interview with Scott Marshall. He's the CEO of Semester at Sea, and he operates a company that provides study abroad programs that are actually based on a ship. And these study abroad programs sail from port to port, and you have the opportunity to study in many countries and learn a lot, doing something maybe in the South Pacific or Asia or even the Mediterranean. But there's lots of great opportunities. This interview went a little bit longer than usual because I found it so fascinating. I personally did a semester in London when I was a college student, and I highly recommend any sort of study abroad program that students might be interested in. I think it's a great experience. And I think this program that Scott is talking about is something that some families should consider. Let's go ahead and jump into the interview and learn more about Semester at Sea. Today I'm talking with Scott Marshall. He is the CEO of Semester at Sea. Welcome, Scott.
Thank you, Brad. It's a pleasure to be with you today.
All right. So, a unique interview for now. This is something I haven't seen much about or learned much about. So we're going to learn together. But what is Semester at Sea? What is it that you guys do?
That's a great place to start. So Semester at Sea, as a study abroad program, has been around since 1963. So it has a very long history. It started at Chapman University, actually inside the university as World Class Afloat. But now it is, and for many years, has been called Semester at Sea. We are a study abroad program that charters a ship and takes college students for 3.5 months to 8 to 10 different countries. And those students spend anywhere between 4 to 6 days in each country. They are taking courses on board the ship. Those courses are actually Colorado State University courses, so Colorado State University is our academic partner, which makes sure that the courses actually are something that can transcript back to a student voyager's home institution. So we take between 500 and 600 college students, another 25 faculty, 30 staff on the 2 voyages a year.
Wow.
A fall voyage and a spring voyage.
Right.
And what's interesting, Brad, if I could just add one more thing, we basically put up a college campus twice a year. That is that we have brand new students, brand new faculty, brand new staff every year, twice a year.
Okay, right. So I'm guessing, you've got some staff that is relatively permanent, but you have, some faculty that come and go as,
Yeah.
So if I'm a parent that's a faculty, if I want to take a sabbatical and then come work for you, that the kind of thing that happens?
Of course. So again, we hire 25 faculty twice a year, and those faculty come from all over the U.S. and around the world. They are not single source. They wonderful diversity. We teach business classes, but we also teach art history and political science and psychology and sociology. So it's a tremendously rich environment for learning and, of course, for faculty members who want almost like a mini liberal arts experience for 3.5 months. Faculty are oftentimes on sabbatical, or they've taken leave, or in their transition between one institution and another. So there's obviously a variety of ways a faculty member could find themselves eligible to apply and participate in a voyage.
Right. So then the mechanics from, the academic and college side is you're essentially an institution. Do you have like a federal ID number and an accredited college kind of thing, or?
Yeah, excellent question, Brad. So that's why we partner with an institution like Colorado State University. They are the accredited institution. and they are the ones who provision the courses. So every course we offer is in the course catalog, has gone through their faculty governance process, and therefore are part of an accredited system.
Mm-hmm.
And the transcripts actually come from Colorado State once a student finishes.
Okay.
So if you had a child who was at University of Illinois and they came on semester C, they would basically have been a visiting student at Colorado State University for that semester. Those courses would be transcribed back to University of Illinois.
Right. Okay, so it's just like many other study abroad programs where sometimes your home institution is running the program and their credits flow through them, but sometimes you're going to get involved in a program that happens to use a different university as kind of the core university, and you transfer to that university for the semester or the year or however long it's going to be, and then you transfer back to wherever you came from.
That's exactly right. That's exactly right.
When I did my study abroad long ago, I went to England, and that's the way it worked, where there's about 5 or 6 of us from the home university that were going. I happened to be going to the home university, but there was 100 in the program, or 150 from the Wisconsin area, and they all transferred to my university in order to go, and then they transferred back from wherever they came from when they returned.
Yeah,
right.
So it's a common model, and it's a long-standing model.
Right. It's not unusual. So the courses you're taking then, are they applicable to where we're traveling, or are they more, business 101 and math 101 or that type of thing where it's not really any different than what you would have gotten at home? It's just during your off time, you get to do all kinds of exciting things.
Yeah. So we offer up to 72, 73, 74 course sections. So different courses. And there's quite a diversity. Obviously, we don't offer nearly as many as a large institution does. Nonetheless, there's quite diversity, right? Communications or marketing or art history or sociology. And they're also offered at 100, 200, 300, 400 level. We tried to match our course offerings to interests of students. So there's more students to study abroad in their sophomore and junior year, so we try to offer more 200 and 300 level courses. Some students travel as gap year students, and so 100 level courses would make sense for them. Mm-hmm. And yes, we do offer some 400 level courses for people who are trying to complete their major. So we have that diversity.
Okay.
And then to your other, I think where you started this question is, how does that then map on to a voyage where we're seeing 8 to 10 countries? So the faculty who are hired for a particular voyage take the standard syllabus of Psych 101 or Marketing 350, and they map the itinerary in there by making sure that the course experience is comparative.
Mm-hmm.
So you really dive into these topics within a syllabus based on where you're going. And that is, in fact, part of the true richness of this experience, that it becomes comparative, where you're not just standardized syllabus, but you're saying, how does marketing apply across these different environments? Or how does art history come alive in these various different countries?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, I can see that there's courses that would lend themselves, like art history, or I took a course when I was in London. I wasn't actually in London. I was in a suburb of London, but on theater. So a lot of our homework was to go to the West End and other places and watch shows, which was fantastic, right? And the shows were great. Having to write a paper about them, not so great, but that's you take the good with the bad when you're doing study abroad. That way you can get some credit. So is that the type of thing that would be like similar to that, where
you got it. Yeah, and that's what you talked about in terms of going to the West End. That's the experiential piece. So I like to use 3 simple words to describe the semester C experience, which is comparative, experiential, international. Comparative, experiential, international. So I described the comparative piece. And then the experiential one, what you're talking about, is you take the classroom experience on the ship and then you take it into a port and you experience it. And then you come back on the ship and you do more reflection on what you just experienced. You do more coursework, and then you go experience it again.
Mm-hmm.
So you see the comparative experiential part of it.
Right. Okay. So I was looking at, and I don't even know, I think it was maybe 2023, somewhere in there, where you're starting somewhere in East Asia, Hong Kong or something. And then you're
Tokyo. Yep.
Tokyo. Yeah. You start in Tokyo and you end up in Europe somewhere.
Yeah, that would be a spring voyage for sure. Our fall voyages start in Europe.
Okay.
And generally head east. And then our spring voyages start east and head west and end up in Europe. That's right.
Okay.
And
so how long is that journey?
So we usually go for 104, 105 days. So 3.5 months.
Okay.
It mirrors closely a semester.
Mm-hmm.
It would start sometime in relatively early September, usually the second week, and would end the third week of December. Right. Just before the holiday season comes.
Right. So you would do similar to the college semester that most colleges are on. So, I mean, that seems like a lot of miles too. So how much time do you spend in port compared to, I mean, I don't know how long it takes to go from port A to port B. Could it be a few days or a week, or how does that work?
Oh, just a side note, Brad. So I grew up in higher ed, did the faculty system, and was in administration. And then I came and started working for Semester at Sea. And I have learned so much about how ships operate, nautical miles, ports, pilot boats, so much. It's been amazing. So in the first part of your question about how much time on land and how much time on the ship, it's roughly half and half. 55, 56 days on the ship and about 50 days on land. And the on land time, again, is split between the 8 to 10 countries we visit. So there's 4 to 6 days in each country.
Okay.
And again, the time on the ship, you're in classes, you're dining together, you're going to the fitness center, you're doing community events and so forth.
Right. So if we're on the ship and doing classes, I guess that makes sense. So you have like a typical college schedule. Is this a boat full of classrooms? Or how does that work?
So first of all, we got to call it a ship because
it is a
ships
ship.
Carry boats. Yeah. Ships carry boats. And so on the ship, it is in many ways a traditional looking cruise ship, but we've modified it to make sure it has these classrooms. So there is a screen, there's a laptop, there's a podium, there's chairs for students to sit in, right? So in that sense, it's modified for a university setting. Things that are unlike the college campus, because it's on the ship, you're not going to have great internet access. Ships just simply don't, unless they are equipped with millions of dollars worth of satellite technology, which certainly military do, some rescue operation ships do, but most standard cruise ships do not.
Right.
That's why it's outrageously expensive when you go on a standard cruise to get internet, and it's even then not very good. So that would be something that's different, but also quite refreshing in the end because it's so community-based. So in many ways, it is like a college campus. Imagine a very large floating dorm. If you have 500, 600 students residing on 3 or 4 different decks, you got faculty, you have dining halls. So, there is this comparability to a college campus.
Mm-hmm. So how many hot tubs and water slides and ice skating rinks and bowling alleys do you have?
None. We have some pools, some swimming pools, although when the weather's cold, they're not heated. So that's a little bit tougher to go in the water. We have a fitness center. But unlike any of the sort of fancy cruise ships, this is an academic program. And as such, we don't have any water slides. There are no hot tubs. We do have a spa service, so people who want to go get a massage, they have to pay extra for these things, or a pedicure, manicure, that they can go get that done. So we do have some of that available for students and faculty and staff.
Okay.
If they want to indulge a bit.
Okay. So when you're on the ship, you have class at 8 and 10 and 11, and you study in between. And then what are the kids doing? Or kids is probably not a fair term, but you know what I mean? What are they doing for entertainment if they don't have access to the internet? I mean, I can't imagine what my daughter would do if she didn't have access to TikTok. I mean, that fills her day. So
what do they do?
Mm-hmm.
So it's not that there's no internet access. It's just not great. So
so they can get email and stuff, but they're not watching video after video on TikTok or that kind of stuff. Right.
Yeah,
so,
there's no streaming. Yeah, you can't stream. It's just not enough bandwidth to stream. So there is a bit of a shock for people, a little withdrawal. What we have seen time and time again, and I tell you, you almost get tired of it, but then you don't, is alumni come off this program like that was the most amazing experience of my college life, because the community that formed was unlike anything they'd experienced. Part of that, not all of it, but part of it is you start to do things that maybe you did more often as a younger person.
Mm-hmm.
There are card games, board games, there's skits, there's evening activities, there's affinity groups. You dine, breakfast, lunch, and dinner with faculty and staff and other peers. You go to the fitness center. You decide, because I am not, but maybe a young adult is certified in bar, one of these fitness programs, and they decide, hey, I'm going to run a bar session twice a week when we're on the ship. And so they do that. And every time I go talk to an alumni, they say, that was the best experience of my life. Best friends come out of this that last a lifetime. And it's because not just because the internet access is limited, but I think that's part of it, but because it's a closed community, which is so unusual, so powerful.
Right. No, I can see it, a lot of that where, people around the world made a lot of good friends in college, and then, or the military, or those types of situations where, you are in close quarters, you can't help but, make friends or enemies, as the case may be. But hopefully you gravitate towards, friends, and then, right. And especially at that age where you're out there looking for people to connect with. So it sounds like there's, movie nights and activities and stuff going on that people can participate in. So then if there's 500-ish students, what's a typical class size? Or I can't imagine that there's the 100-student lecture hall. It sounds like there's too much diversity where classes might be smaller.
There's one course called Global Studies, which is required for all students. And it's really a gathering point for common discussion and content. That one has 2 sections held in a fairly large union, what we call the union. And it can be as large as 250.
Okay.
Right? Beyond that, we don't have large classrooms. Beyond that, the largest classrooms are 35, and the average class size is 24.
Mm-hmm.
So there's actually smaller classes, that can be 18, 19. So we do try to manage the class size.
Right. Okay. And then the classes are very, while you're on the ship at least, they're very similar to a college course where there's some combination of lectures and writing and labs and tests and quizzes, and it's not dramatically different in that regard.
Yeah, you got it. We have to get any syllabus for a course that's offered on our voyage has to be approved by the relevant department chair at Colorado State University, which means they hold us to a high standard, which we should be, which means, just as you said, Brad, there's got to be tests and writing assignments and presentations and so forth. It maintains all that rigor that's essential for a college experience.
Right. So then how does IT work on the ship? That's always something that happens a lot on college campuses, right? You have access to a printer, you don't. You need to bring a laptop. You need to. What are you recommending for students there?
Oh, for sure, have a laptop. We have a learning management system. We use Moodle, which is an open source learning management system, and it resides within the intranet on the ship.
Mm-hmm.
So faculty use this as a assignment tool, an attendance tool, a grading tool, and provisioning of all course materials. So that learning management system works within the ship environment. That's a really important aspect. The other investment we made recently in terms of the academic programming and IT is a live stream technology, so that particularly for global studies in the large union, if someone is seasick or otherwise not able to attend something, they can live stream into their cabin so that they can get that. They can also watch videos later, which of course is a key piece that we've learned through the pandemic, that the ability to go back and review is key. And so we've put this kind of technology in. We have other sort of communication tools on the ship that allow people to communicate. Obviously, it's not a huge campus, so you can find people in person relatively easily.
Mm-hmm.
But there's also an internal communication system
Right.
that we manage.
Okay. Let's talk a little bit about the accommodations then. I've not been on a cruise myself, so I don't even have a frame of reference here. So if you're a student on the ship, do you have like a roommate and a porthole and, like a bunk bed or something in this little room like you see in the military, or how does that work?
Actually, this ship, the MV World Odyssey, is quite comfortable. They're well maintained, well designed cabins. You can have a cabin by yourself, but of course that's more expensive, just like it would be on a cruise ship, just like it would be on a college campus. If you're living on your own, you're
Right.
going to pay more.
Mm-hmm.
You can have a double, so and then you can have a triple, and in some cases there's actually what we call quads, which is 4. Obviously, the more people in your cabin, the less someone pays. It's simple logic in the world we live in, right? There's also what we call interior cabins that do not have a view to the ocean, and exterior cabins which do.
Okay.
Right. So that's, a cruise ship would have a similar model, but so does life.
Yeah.
Right?
Oh, yeah.
This is the reality. It kind of mirrors reality that the more people you're residing with, the less you pay. The more you get a view to the outside or natural light in terms of your living situation, the more someone would pay. So that's the general way I would describe it.
Okay.
And so there's tiered pricing according to the accommodation.
And then if 2, 3, 4 people in a small cabin gets a little overwhelming, can you go to the library like you would on a campus, or go to the student center, or go to some other places where there might be a desk where you can sit quietly and study because you've got to cram and your roommate wants to sleep, that kind of stuff?
Absolutely. There is a lot of space for people to move around, find space on their own, find space to meet as teams from a class. And that's key. What we find is students probably at the front end, and parents even at the front end of deciding to go on a semester C voyage, place so much importance on a cabin choice, when in fact, during the voyage itself, the student voyager does not spend that much time in that cabin.
Mm-hmm.
They're out on the deck, they're going to the fitness center, they're at the dining hall, they're in the main union hall, right? They're finding other places to be.
Right.
And I sailed as a faculty member with my wife and 2 boys, and we were all in one cabin.
Mm-hmm.
And the cabin both was a retreat for us to sort of find our own space, but also we found all kinds of space outside of our cabin to do our own thing.
Right. Yeah. I mean, I guess I see that as well, that, even in my home today, my one son that has his computer elsewhere only sleeps in his bedroom. That's about the only reason he would go in there, because his computer's set up in the rec room and he does stuff with friends and everything else. And, he blows in and out a lot. And
How old's your son?
He's a senior in college now.
Okay.
Or excuse me, a senior in high school, going to be going off to college. So, yeah, I mean, I can see that where, again, I go in there and I sleep, and maybe I lay in my bed and read here and there. But if I need to study, there's a desk there, but I might get in the habit of studying at the library or on deck somewhere where I can, or who knows, right? I guess that makes sense. So then let's talk about that. What everybody's wondering, because it's come up now, is, well, what does it actually cost to get involved in this? Can you give us some ideas of pricing?
Absolutely. So the first thing I would say is, before we go into, because it's on our website, there's no secrets here, is if you're a parent thinking about where you're sending your kid to college, which you've clearly given some thought to, because your child's heading off here soon, and your child or you as a parent are thinking, wow, study abroad would be cool. As a parent, one thing I would keep in mind is the retention rates, and completion rates for college students who have studied abroad is statistically higher, notably higher than those who didn't.
Mm-hmm.
So if you're making an investment in your kid to go to college, it actually, now, of course, there's diversity among groups, but overall, across the United States, what we find is kids who studied abroad are more likely to be retained in college and complete. So just keep that in mind. All your listeners keep that in mind, that in terms of making an investment in study abroad, it actually leads to kids completing their college degree at a higher rate.
Right.
So for many, it is actually a very worthy investment.
Yes,
okay.
For sure.
So for sure, right? The second thing is, of course, we'll go into the pricing and our financial aid and so forth, is, as you know well, because of your podcast and your real awareness of higher ed, there's a huge gap between low-cost higher ed and high-cost higher ed. I mean, massive, right?
Right, exactly. And we talk about that all the time, that, a year of college is, low end is $25,000, all in $20,000 in some states. A few very low cost states will even do better than 20, but that's Wyoming and other very low cost locations. But a lot of states will have higher costs where they're typically paying 25, 28, 30, 32 all in for 1 year of college. And that's just the low cost option in that state. Again, it goes up from there all the way to Harvard and Yale and et cetera. The most expensive at 85-ish all in.
Yeah, exactly.
On its way to 90 because it goes up 3,000-4,000 a year. So
exactly. So you nailed it. You got the prices, massive variance. So for us, when we state our price, it includes tuition, room and board, and all the programming on the ship, right?
Okay.
So a basic double inside cabin is about $26,000, almost $27,000, right?
Okay.
That's without any financial aid and scholarships, so forth. That's the base price. Now, this does not include the cost of airfare to get to the ports. This does not include any visas someone would need to apply for if it's required based on their passport to get into certain countries along their voyage. It does not include in-country expenses. So if someone wants to travel when they get into the country, that would be an addition. So that is the price to complete our voyage, right?
Mm-hmm.
Base price. It goes all the way up to almost $33,000 for an outside, double. So this is, you're only got one roommate and you get a view of the ocean, right?
Mm-hmm. Okay.
So this basically from $26,874 the lowest price, to 32,874. So you get a sense of that variance. Again, there's a lot that goes into it. And we actually have a cost calculator, which is pretty common now.
Mm-hmm.
So students, and it's a very popular tool for our prospective voyagers to go in and do this cost calculator. How much financial aid are they receiving? So these are folks that have submitted their FAFSA. We put their Pell Grant in, and we match Pell Grant, so that immediately subtracts cost and so forth. So that's a really important tool.
Right. Yeah, and just to be clear, you are an accredited college that's part of the federal system, so they can use they can do the FAFSA, and they can be awarded federal financial aid, which would be Pell Grants, supplemental grants, work study.
And then the loans.
Do you guys do work study?
We do some work study. That's right. And that would be obviously an internal funded effort. So it varies a bit by voyage, but we have somewhere between 15 and 20 student assistants who really are important for us. They help in IT, they help in the library, they help in various roles across the ship. And people apply for those student assistantships, which certainly can help.
Right.
There's no doubt.
And then, right, to go back to the list, then the two things I haven't mentioned yet would be the direct loan to the student and the Parent Plus loan. So all those things would be available. So I guess certainly with the loans, you can make it happen almost for sure, because the Parent Plus loan will cover to the full cost, and that's, and that'll get you going.
That's right.
Now, whether or not you should borrow that much money is kind of a different question, of course.
Of course, absolutely.
So then but you also mentioned a little bit that there is some merit aid and some scholarships.
Yeah. So we have obviously donor-funded scholarships, which are shown on our website, and we also have scholarships that we fund for certain groups. Some are merit-based and some are need-based, and they're all outlined on our website in terms of what they're eligible for. The other thing we do, and this is something I'm guessing you really recommend to parents and students, is don't just look at the institution and the federal government.
Mm.
There's this third large group of funding opportunities. Where else are organizations that are providing scholarships for students to do higher ed, which would include study abroad? So we actually, our director of financial aid, she's amazing. She's really mapped out. Here's what we provide. Here's what you can get federally. And here's the other set where we encourage you to look for other opportunities as well.
Right. Yeah. So exactly. The outside scholarship piece, private scholarships, different names, but so you can go to Coca-Cola and win a scholarship, or you can go to various places, win scholarships, your local Rotary, the corporation down the street, et cetera, that offer scholarships. And generally those scholarships, you can spend them at any institution. So this qualifies as one of the institutions you could use it at for that. So as an example, I won a 4-year scholarship locally from a manufacturing company in my little hometown. And it was $1,000 a year for 4 years. And the year I studied abroad, I could have, again, I just mixed in with everything else. It doesn't matter where it actually applied, but theoretically it could have been used on that semester because, so that general scholarship. And of course, if you win scholarships, it kind of comes out in the wash as well, where even if you couldn't use it on that semester, you use it on your other semesters then, and you reduce their costs. So now you have more money available to pay, right? So this isn't necessarily going to be a low cost endeavor. Just like when I studied abroad, it was my most expensive semester by far, but well worth it. And
I studied abroad as well, and I exactly the same what you're saying. That is that it was my most expensive, and it was the most valuable. I can attribute almost my entire career to having derived from the impact of that experience. I studied abroad in Japan, and I didn't know at the time, of course, but my entire career has been focused on global and global education, global experiences, global teaching. So,
right. So if we look at a typical, I don't know what you call it, class or cohort or whatever, is it mostly U.S. students? Is it mostly, college juniors? Can you give us some demographics of, is it mostly, is it equally split men and women, or, what does it look like?
Yeah, let's start with the U.S. international. So generally about 85% U.S. based, U.S. passport holders, we would say, and 15% international passport holders. And we distinguish that because we always have to look at passports to see what the visa entry requirements are for our voyages, right? So about 85% US based, 15% international based. And then in terms of class, it's pretty spread across your traditional 4-year distinctions. That is that, we have freshman, sophomore, junior, senior. However, certainly students are more likely, and we mirror that, more likely to study abroad in their sophomore and junior years. Juniors is the most popular, with freshman and senior not represented as much. So it's roughly 30% junior, 25% senior, maybe 30-30, and then the freshman and the senior and our gap year and our post-grad make up the other portions of that. Mm-hmm. In terms of gender, we look a lot like all other study abroad. And if you look at the historical trends in study abroad, it has not changed for decades. And that is that 2/3 of study abroad students are female.
Really?
Yes. And 1/3 are male. And we actually have tipped at times above that in terms of the female-male representation. And if you can find out the answer, we'd love to know, because we'd like to go against that trend, just because the balance probably is better for a voyage environment. It's still an amazing experience. And interesting enough, just a little anecdote, my older son, 3 years ago in 7th grade, went on as a study abroad for a week, and the proportion was exactly the same. There's something, I think, that starts very early that sets this up. And I've got a lot of hypotheses. I don't have any answers.
Yes, exactly. Okay, so when I studied abroad back in the good old days, my method of communication was to call home with an international calling card from a payphone on the street somewhere in the middle of the night, because I wanted to call while people were awake. I was in Europe, so the best time to call was, midnight, because then it was 6:00 and my parents were home. It was after work at home. I could, that was a good time to call. And I was a student often up at midnight and often on the street at midnight. So it wasn't that big a deal to, pop into a phone booth, which, that's a public phone for those of you that are really young, that you put money in to make calls home, because there's not one in your pocket. But anyway, so how does that work? How do students and families stay in contact in this day and age? I'm sure technology has something to do with it.
Oh, you bet. So internet-based messaging services like WhatsApp work relatively well. There certainly are moments when the ship is moving and satellite connectivity, so internet connectivity may not be stable, so that wouldn't work. But for most voyages, most of the time, a messaging service like that will be functioning.
So that a text message or like a recorded video? Or
video would be very difficult. So just a message, a text-based message would generally work most of the time. Not all the time, but most of the time. Anytime you're trying to upload through that system, like a video, that's going to be really hard. Anytime you're trying to live stream, that's going to absorb tons of bandwidth.
Right.
But for sure, something like WhatsApp, which is still internet-based, of course, but the text portion of it would generally work.
Okay. Now, so would a student have a cell phone with them that would work in ports and stuff, or is that it just not, I guess, because the international cell phone concept, I think, has kind of been kind of solved, perhaps at this point, where your iPhone may work wherever you turn up. Is that true?
Yeah,
Or
so there's a lot of different ways to do this. Some will actually have phones, dual SIM card phones, so they go into a country, they get a local SIM card, they slide that into the second slot, and they're using a local number. That's one way. Second way, you can, within your current service provider, get an international plan. I used to do AT&T, and it had a certain fee that I pay when I traveled, right?
mm-hmm.
I now use Google Fi, which has only one cost per month, no matter where I'm at. And so that has worked well for me. And so there's a variety of ways you can do it,
Mm-hmm.
right? You can have a dual SIM, or you can have a single SIM and just take out the SIM card you usually use and switch it,
Right.
or a dual SIM. So you could do the SIM card mechanism, you could do the international plan mechanism, or Google Fi, or maybe there's other types of providers that have a similar approach. So yeah, when young adults get into an international country, they've got it figured out much quicker than I ever.
Yes, for sure.
Stuff out bad. Yeah.
All right.
They're suddenly TikToking and Snapchatting and doing things that I don't do.
Right. Yeah. So I think that covers most of my questions. I guess what I didn't cover yet is, what is it like when you're in port then? So you pull into, I don't know, pick a big, Shanghai or some big city that happens to be on the itinerary, and they say, all right, well, we're going to be in port for the next 6 days.
Yep.
Is it get off the boat and good luck? Is it, well, here's your exact itinerary. You're going to go here for this class, and you're going to go do this for this class, and then you're going to do this for, what is it?
Yeah. So there's 3 things that can occur when you pull into a country. One is, as a faculty member, you will have 1 field class per course you teach. And so a student in a class knows that of the 8 to 10 countries and the 3 or 4 classes they're taking, each of those classes will have 1 day in 1 country in which they are with their faculty member and their fellow students in that class. I'll give an illustration. When I was a faculty member, I taught 3 courses. One of those courses was international business. And so when we went to Vietnam for 1 day, all the students and I went to a contract shoe manufacturer to really understand the supply chain for shoes, right? A great international business topic. That's an example of a field class. The second option are field programs, which are designed in partnership with local tour operators, which you can pay extra for. Those could be all the way from a half day orient with the city to a 3-day, 2-night homestay situation, right? So there's that variety. And the third one is just as you described, which is you don't have a field class, you decided to not do a field program, so you're going to explore with 3 or 4 of your fellow student voyagers, and you get to design your program. Like there's this independence. And you spent time in London during study abroad, right?
Mm-hmm.
That independence is intimidating and extraordinarily confidence building.
Yes.
You get a student who has never traveled before, and the first time they step off the ship in a port they've never been in, and they have to explore, it can be overwhelming, intimidating, anxiety-inducing. By halfway through the voyage, these young adults have gotten such presence, such confidence to go into a brand new environment and find their way. It is a phenomenal transformation that occurs.
Yes, I would agree with that. I mean, just in my own experience, and when backpacking through Europe after I was done in London, I don't know what it was, 11, 12 countries in 14 days or something. And and it was interesting too, because you run into people that are doing the same thing and you make friends. And I ran into people I studied with in London, randomly in Switzerland and that type of stuff. So it is an interesting community, in general. So you mentioned then if, when we pull into port, maybe we've got to participate in a class for one day. If we chose to take a lot of classes that had that component, would it be, Tuesday with this professor and Wednesday with that professor, or would there be conflict where you probably couldn't do that?
Yeah, we addressed that up front because absolutely that potential exists, but we work directly with the student to ensure that it doesn't. That is, they've kind of chosen, I want these 3 or 4 classes, and we say, actually, these 2 classes or courses, these 2 courses have a conflict on field class. So what else can we suggest? What can we sub one for? So we do that work way ahead of time with the student to ensure that that conflict doesn't exist. That was very savvy of you, Brad, to think about that possibility.
Right, exactly.
So we addressed that up front.
And then you mentioned, so when you're in port, do the students have access to the ship? I mean, can they sleep on the ship essentially, so they're not trying to find accommodations, but they could theoretically, I guess, what is the rules around how you keep track of 500 young adults? How often does a student miss departure because you're supposed to be here at 6:00 and we weighed anchor at 8:00 and we set sail, and now you've got to, we'll meet you in the next port. Good luck. Yeah. Or is that your problem or is that their problem? How does, what's the...
Well, yeah, there's a lot in your question. The first thing I would say is, to start this off, is health and safety is our top priority at all times. I mean, these are young adults. We want to care for them every way possible. So the ship stays in port. The gangway is down. They can come to the ship at any time. They can hotel on the ship, right? This is their home. Mm-hmm. They can come back home at any point in time. We have mental health counselors. We have medical staff. We have everybody there to support them all the time. That never leaves.
Right.
And so that's really important. If a student twists an ankle, we have an on-call system so that that person can call the ship and we can either provide the service on the ship for that twisted ankle, or if for any reason, in a terrible case, maybe they've broken an ankle, then we make sure that we already have assessed where the best medical care is and how do we get them that care within that port. So those services are always available 24/7 while we're in port. The second question is more interesting, kind of funny at times. That is, do we ever leave anybody behind? So our obligation is to never leave anybody behind, right?
Right.
Again, if health and safety is our priority, we would never leave anybody behind. We are very strict with on-ship time. If it's 5 days in Shanghai, there will be an on-ship time that last day. If you do not make that on-ship time, you will be penalized in what we call deck time on a next port. You will have to stay on the ship for a certain number of hours as a consequence of being late for the previous port. Mm-hmm. Now, has anybody been left in country in the past? Very, very infrequently. We had a case many years ago where 2 students lost their passports. Mm-hmm. And they had to go visit the consulate in that country to get those renewed. Right? They couldn't get back on the ship and continue to the next country without their passports.
Right.
So we actually have different swing positions. They're not permanent full-time employees on the ship, but swing positions called into action in those cases so that individual from the ship will get off with those students and make sure that they're taken care of and they get the passports, and then they will have to wait and fly to the next country that the ship's going to.
Right.
In order to rejoin the experience. So It has happened, but again, our obligation is to ensure that everybody is on board.
Right. But you're well aware of who's not showing up. It's not like a typical, I don't know, train or something where they say we're closing the doors and leaving. And if you're not on it, not my problem.
That's exactly right. We have, in our own parlance, we have what we call swipe on, swipe off, swipe off. We have a ship ID.
Mm-hmm.
And when you come on board, it's scanned. So we know. And so at on ship time, we have a full sort of enrollment. Like, who's here? Looks like everybody's here. Good. Close the doors. Pull up the gangway. We're going to go set sail. So if someone gets off, they scan. We recorded it. They're off the ship. So we track that all the time.
Right. Okay. So then let's talk a little bit about, again, if I have a class where, all right, Tuesday is booked because I have to do what the professor's, scheduled for us, but on Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, I'm on my own time. Is it like a cruise ship that might say, here's your tours and different things you can pick, or do they just do it on their own or some combination thereof? Can they say, well, I'm going to get in where it happened to be in Africa, I want to go do a safari, so I'm going to get in this Jeep with this random stranger and go off in the savannah and look at lions? I mean, is that allowed, or
it's a combination of all of that? So I would say, first of all, yes, they can choose what we call a field program after they finish that requirement, right? So they can buy another program from us and be on that program. And for all the parents out there, this is something we vet, we design in partnership with a tour operator, right? So it can feel better to a parent to insist that their young adults participate in those. And yes, if they opt out of doing a field program, they can design their own activities. There are some constraints on that. There are what we call prohibited activities, right? There are things that we say you are not allowed to do this. Example, they're not allowed to rent motor vehicles. That's prohibited.
Okay.
Simple story there is no insurance coverage. We have standard insurance, travel insurance that students purchase, but it's not covered. So if a student decides against our prohibition to rent a moped and they get in an accident, guess what? That's on the parent, that's on the student. There's no coverage. So we are very clear on the prohibited activities. Beyond that, they do design their own experience. And that's part of the power of study abroad. Mm-hmm. We want students to be able to do this more independent, confidence-building activity. Because at the end of that, they do come away as transformed individuals with a whole nother level of confidence in themselves to be able to navigate uncertain situations.
Right.
Life's full of uncertainty.
Absolutely. And I think that, again, as a parent, letting go and letting them, take charge is a challenge for many parents. But if you remember back when, you were 18 or 19 or 20 and you were just ready to go do it, and you didn't have quite the concerns that most parents do. And of course, parents are saying, exactly, that's why we have to. And it's like, no, you don't. Most of the time, things will turn out just fine. Or they'll learn something, or both. All right, so then what kind of budget would be reasonable to think about as far as, if we're going into ports and buying extra tours and that kind of stuff? Is that a couple $100 here and there, or is that thousands of dollars?
It truly does vary widely on how people want to approach it and their own resources. Mm-hmm. So we've had people spend as $1,000 outside of the program fee because they don't have the resources, or they like to be frugal and have minimalist approaches. They have 6 friends and they hire a driver together and they keep it low. And we've had those with more resources by all the field programs that are all overnight. They have spent many, many thousands of dollars on this. So it really does depend on how someone wants to approach it.
Right. So it sounds like maybe you put a little effort into having a couple of reasonable cost options on the list where it might only be a few $100s instead of every choice is $1,500 times 10 ports. That's another 15,000 where.
Exactly. You've nailed it, Brad. So, gosh, people can do a couple, there's always a couple programs that are less than $100. They're fairly simplistic. They get you oriented to a city. They get you oriented to the cuisine or dance or something, right? Just 6 hours, kind of immerse yourself in this environment, get familiar with it, explore something kind of cool about this city, all the way to a much more expensive, like you said, if we're selling safaris, these overnight experiences. When we visit India, people will go on a multi-day experience. It includes the Taj Mahal and other major sites, and that could be thousands of dollars. Or I can't remember. I should be careful. $1,500 or something for that experience. So it will really vary, and people will have choice, right? We want to make sure they have choice. Sometimes people are like, for this port, I'm just going to stay in the city and get an Airbnb with some people and relax, right? And actually, as a family, when we sailed in spring of 17, we did that in a couple of ports. We were like, we just want to chill out.
Yes.
And we'll explore the area on foot or by taxi, but we're going to keep it really simple. Other places, we did major field programs, and other places, we really adventured on our own. So you have that ability, right, to make a choice.
All right. Well, great. Well, it's been a great learning experience for me. I had a lot of questions, and I can see the value in it. Can you speak to a little bit more? You mentioned, you studied abroad, I studied abroad. We found it to be a great experience. You mentioned a lot of alumni come out of it saying it was a great experience. Do you think it was certain people gravitate to this type of thing and therefore they're likely to enjoy it? Or is it kind of the other way around where anybody that's just gets over the fear of it is going to benefit from it?
It's a great question, and I don't know if I know the answer perfectly. So if I could give you an example of two alum.
Right. Let me tell you why I'm asking the question, right?
Yeah.
As a parent, if my student says, I don't think I'm interested, are we done? Should we just say, well, if they're not interested, we're not gonna push them into it? Or how do I gauge if it's a good fit? Again, because there is times when you push your student into something, gymnastics or baseball or whatever when they were 7 or 10 or 12, and you realize, oh, that was a disaster. Maybe I wanted to do it a lot more than they wanted to do it, and that's very clear. And it ended poorly.
Yeah.
What where have you seen things end poorly? I mean, I don't know this for certain, but I'm guessing occasionally a student flies home and we're done now, and whether it's medical emergencies or family emergencies at home, or how do we avoid
Yeah, that can happen, that stuff for sure. And it can happen semester C, it can happen in study abroad. It can also happen on an average campus.
Oh, right. It happens everywhere.
It's like, oh, that was a mistake. They just spent a semester studying 2 courses that were worthless to them in the end, right? So, and this is life where we make choices. We're like, that wasn't the right one. So that happens. I have 2 kids as well. And what I would say to them is, you, at some point in your life, will reflect on this and know how important it was to you. Whether it's in the moment or it's 6 months or 2 years or 5 years later, you will reflect back on that experience and say, that really was important to me. That was a really important experience. Right. Whether it changed my major or it changed how I think about the world, or I found great new friends that are dear and will be friends for life, whatever it could be all of those things. Because it's such a step out of normal life. It has the greatest potential to impact people in really important ways. It's only when we step out of normal life and take a small risk, and it's a relatively small risk, actually.
Yes.
It's right.
Right.
It's
Right. I mean, and let's define risk. Are we talking about, something terrible happens that we regret it, or we tried it and we didn't like it? Those are two completely different risks, right? Just like taking your summer job, right? I don't think I'm going to like this job. I'll take it anyway and see how it goes. Oh, I was right. I didn't like it. That's one thing versus, well, I ended up in prison because I took this job. That's a different type of risk, right? So,
yeah, exactly. Deciding to, I'm going to go up Mount Everest where, what is it, like a third of the people die?
Right, exactly.
That's like a known risk.
Right.
Wow. But going on a study abroad, the known risk is this is going to be uncomfortable. I'm going to meet new people. I'm going to be challenged in my comfort zone, right? Those are the real risks that are known.
Right.
And those are really important risks to take in life to launch someone into true adulthood, into their career, into their personal life, in my view. Now, I'm biased because I studied abroad. You studied abroad.
Right. But
for a parent who didn't study abroad, I think they probably had enough experience now in life to know, yes, actually taking a small risk like this will be tremendously valuable to my kid.
Mm-hmm.
They will not look back on that and regret it.
Right. But getting back to the, another analogy, right? Boarding school of some sort, right? Where my kid is running with the wrong crowd and doing the wrong things, and he's about to fail out of college and he just needs a change of venue. So I'm going to force him to go on your ship, as a, get straight now, kid, and, get away from your friends and go make new friends. And, that would be an extreme, of course, but you understand what I'm saying is there's different reasons, you're not necessarily equipped to be the boot camp kind of place.
No.
So they have to want to do it to some level where if they, decide that, well, I'm just not getting off the ship, I'll show them.
Yeah. Going back to one of your earlier questions was, what motivates people to do something like this? Is it because they're inclined ahead of time? Or is it, this was just a big step and they decided, what the heck, right? I mean, what is that initial inclination? And I would illustrate two alums who are almost polar opposites in this. One works in Seattle, works at the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, at the Gates Foundation. And she was a first-gen student, so clearly not only did her parents not study abroad, they didn't go to higher ed. And she just said, I have to do something different. I want to step out. I want to see something. And when semester at sea was somehow presented to her, she didn't know anybody. She hadn't traveled internationally. She took the jump. Mm-hmm. And I met with her about a year and a half ago, and she says, to this day, after 20 years, semester at sea experience convinced her that she needed to be involved in something that she believed every day she was making a difference. Like that's right.
Right.
So her pre-inclination was not, I got to study abroad. It was just, I want to do something different. I got to step out. And this was what was presented to her, and she took the jump. Then I talked to a lot of alumni, and I talked to someone not too long ago. She sailed about 5 years ago, and her aunt and her mother sailed. And so it was just this thing for her that she'd grown up knowing she was going to do.
Right.
Right.
Yeah. Right. Exactly.
So very different environments. And we have all of that. Like what pre-inclines someone to do something like this.
Right. Yeah, exactly. And that's, again, that, these questions arise from, I consult with a lot of families, and we'll have that situation where, one student is, very outgoing and out of their shell and looking for adventure. And the next student is, no, I really want to kind of study close to home. And sometimes parents are like, well, we got to push them out of the nest a little somehow and get them to get out in the world. And who knows, they might actually like it if they're willing to try it. But for whatever reason, we can't, get that going. And that was me a little bit around study abroad, where I was a little bit quiet and, got the chance to go out and go to London where nobody knew me. And then because nobody knew me, I could be whoever I wanted and just, kind of restart, so to speak, make friends.
And what a valuable experience. Yeah,
right.
That's tremendous for a young adult.
Right.
Absolutely tremendous.
Now, do you see a lot of people that you mentioned, like an aunt and that? So you've got a lot of, repeat customers and generational customers and that kind of stuff. But do you also see people that, a lot of people obviously are taking a leap and they're coming all by themselves, so to speak, whether it's they knew someone that did it, but they're not there now, right? They got a great recommendation 2 years ago or whatever. But do people show up in pairs and, friends and that kind of stuff where they say, hey, let's do this together? Maybe they're college buddies or whatever.
Yeah, we see that quite a fair amount. Absolutely. Best friends get on, they share a cabin. We see both. We see people who don't know a soul when they get on board, and we see people who come with their college roommate or their best friend from high school. We see all of that.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, good. I think we've talked quite a long time here, so this is probably one of my longer podcasts, but again, it's something I found interesting, so I had lots of questions. I really appreciate you spending all this time. If people want to learn more, can you tell us, what the process would be of, obviously we can go to your website if we wanted to talk with somebody. How does the process work?
We're super easy to find. semesteratsea.org.
Yep.
Super easy, right? Semester at Sea. You enter it in, you'll find us. And we also have what we call regional directors. So we basically have, recruiters who operate within regions, and you can find us on your website depending on where your young adult is going to school. You can find the regional recruiter and immediately contact them, say, hey, I'm thinking about this. That regional recruiter will be back in touch. Whatever questions you might have. Timing, when this makes sense, the courses, the voyage itineraries, all kinds of advice. And then, again, just like universities, the application process is fairly straightforward and so forth. So we have that all set up to make sure it's a relatively easy process for you to get engaged.
Right. So it's currently May. This, might not go live till, say, July. I'm not exactly sure when, but sometime in the future. What is the time frame for making the decision? Like, if I'm going to get on a reasonable time frame, and if I wanted to do this in 2023, is it, when should I be working hard now to get it? Should I be working 6 months in advance to when we depart, or a year and a half in advance to when we depart?
Yeah, so there still is a possibility, right? Contact us, talk to us. There's a lot of there's work to do to get it done, but it's been done within that small range. But then really look at spring 23 and fall 23. Plan out for sure. Again, July. The months. Then you got August and September before we start that voyage. So it's pretty limited. But again, we've done it. Beyond that, start looking to the January voyage, spring 2023, and then fall 2023 and beyond. Those voyages are up on our website. You can see the itineraries. All of them are super, super cool. I wish I could just retire and go on these voyages myself. But I have an office job.
Yes, exactly. All right. Well, I do appreciate it. And we're going to put all this information in the show notes as well. And, let's stay in touch.
Thanks, Brad. I really appreciate it.
Yep,
have a great week.
All right. That was a great interview with Scott. I learned a ton about Semester at Sea, and I wish I was young again, so I had the opportunity to look into something like this again. I really did enjoy my London trip when I did that many moons ago. Next, we have a Brad Recommends. I'm going to talk a little bit about some of our free resources, so stick around.
The latest tips, tricks, and tools you can use today. This is Brad Recommends on Taming the High Cost of College.
Today, I'm recommending some of the free resources we have on our website. So if you go to tamingthehighcostofcollege.com, we've got a number of free resources that families can use as you're planning and trying to understand how to pay for college. We've got the Scholarship Guide for Busy Parents. This is a program, it's a 4-video series that helps families understand how scholarships work. And again, we'll get into the scholarships from the colleges themselves as well as outside scholarships. For some families, scholarships is a great strategy. And for other families, some of the scholarships may be a complete waste of time because you're not going to win. So the Scholarship Guide helps get you up to speed to figure out what strategy is going to work well for your family, whether it's working really hard at scholarships or just taking the scholarships at the college you're attending or something in between. The second item there is what I call the cost of colleges by income. We have a state chart for each state that shows each of the colleges and what they cost based on a family's income. Now, again, this is average cost for a particular group. So let's say the average cost is $35,000 at a $65,000 school for a certain income. Of course, what does that mean? Well, that helps you understand that there are scholarships and other free money available because this chart shows what the net cost after scholarships and other free money is out there. So it's useful if you're just starting the process because it can give you an idea of what college might actually cost because the sticker price isn't necessarily that indicative of what it really costs. If you're further into the process, then you can kind of compare your results with the chart and see if you're in the ballpark of what other people have seen. So that's a great resource. And then finally, if you want to delve a little deeper into your specific situation, we've got the free college money report. If you sign up for this, you can essentially put in some of your information when your students are graduating and starting college and the colleges you're interested in and some of your academic and financial information. And it will help figure out what scholarships are available and give you an estimate of the cost for each college, again, based more specifically on your specific family situation. So that's also a great resource for people that are starting to shop for colleges and trying to figure out what the real cost might be based on scholarships and other resources. Again, all of these are at tamingthehighcostofcollege.com. And you can click on the resources tab, or if you go to scholarship guide, it would be at tamingthehighcostofcollege.com/scholarships. All right, that's all we have for today. I really appreciate you listening. We'll continue to put out new episodes, so we'll see you again next week. I would appreciate it if you wanted to reach out, or if you had any questions, you can send us an email, but also give us some ratings and reviews wherever you're getting your podcast. It helps us get found by other parents. That's all we have for today. We'll see you next week.
Thank you for listening to the Taming the High Cost of College podcast. Now it's time for you to take action. Head to tamingthehighcostofcollege.com for show notes, bonus content, and to leave feedback for Brad. The next step on your college journey starts now.
Brad Baldridge is a registered representative of Cambridge Investment Research and an investment advisor representative of Cambridge Investment Research Advisors, a registered investment advisor. Securities are offered through Cambridge Investment Research Incorporated, a broker-dealer and member of FINRA and SIPC. Brad owns 2 companies, Baldridge Wealth Management and Baldridge College Solutions. The Baldridge companies are not affiliated with Cambridge Investment Research.